This thing's looking pretty dialed. You need to get a clutch back on her. Seal up the transmission. We need to paint that thing, weld some stuff. But she's coming along. What did we find? What did we find today?
This is some new... Okay, first of all, I kind of feel like I have to give myself more credit for driving around this. You know, because the car's never going to be perfect. No matter what car I'm driving, even if it's my own race car. Daniel just pulled the caliper with the pads out, and the previous owner installed this pad backwards. So I did that entire test plus the race on pads that were backwards, and you can see the piston pushing into the pad material. This indentation, you know, you guys are probably wondering, how did it stop at all? The interesting thing is metal on metal has pretty good friction. Surprisingly, there's stopping power. Is it dangerous? Very, very dangerous. Like, it's crumbling as I'm holding it. Like, there's parts, look, I could literally, oh no, look at this, watch, check this out. I can eat this right now because it's literally just coming apart in my fingers. It's funny, this one was probably the one that was doing all the work in terms of like friction, but even this one was falling apart. Look, this is how I was stopping. This is how I raced. It's kind of amazing. It's incredible. But you know what? This is good. You were just saying, this is why really it is good that we're going through everything. It's a safety thing at this point. Kegel just reminded me of something.
Oh, your caliper? You thought one was sticking or like seizing up.
Yeah, so it was making like a crazy noise when I was driving around the paddock. The brakes were sticking, like really sticking. Almost like I was dragging the brakes. Almost like I had the e-brake up. And it was making this crazy noise. And now that we see this, I fully understand why it was doing it. Because my theory is that a piece broke off, and then all of a sudden it's mounted like this, right? And then, which means this sharp stuff,
yeah,
it was probably digging into the rotor. And so what I did was I kept pushing it harder and harder, and then that's how I made this indentation.
Makes sense. And it makes sense why I guess the materials, I was gonna say, it makes sense why the indent's not even, but that material's falling off.
Yeah, but it's funny because it for sure was like at an angle.
Yeah, wedged in there. Yeah.
So that's what got it stuck. And I bet you, and it only happened after a couple sessions. I don't know if you remember. It only happened after a couple sessions.
Yeah.
Because I must have just punished it so much to the point where it just didn't, you know, obviously it wasn't meant to be like that anyways. But it's kind of interesting to me that these pads can be put in backwards.
Yeah, that there's not like a keyway or like a puzzle piece kind of fit to them.
What's amazing to me is how much of the metal I wore off. That's what's amazing.
Oh yeah, that backing pad is almost
non-existent. There's nothing left. It almost...
I wonder how bad...
Whoa, look at this. Look how thick the backing pad is.
Oh yeah, that's
compared
like
to this
3/16 of material. Dude, it would have been catastrophic had you worn through this backing pad. I mean, the material would have crumbled. You would have lost essentially, well, like a ½ inch of pad depth. So then the piston would have possibly overextended, losing all your... I mean, this is like potential catastrophic brake failure.
Yeah. This could have been really bad.
Crazy.
Well, glad we're going through it. And we got brand new pads coming from CSG.
Yes.
They're making some custom pads for us. And I really like what CSG does because I run their pads on my Supra and that thing stops so well. Just even on the stock calipers.
They're like big time attack guys, right?
Yeah. They're huge. That's super cool.
Last night I sealed this part up right here. I don't remember how much I talked about it, so I'm going to do it again. But basically, this guy had some like green kind of like gasket maker on it. I've seen similar stuff a lot on this car already. I'm just using Permatex Right stuff. Like this stuff, you glue this on the car or something, it's gonna seal. Glued that piece on. It's 90 minute. I did it late at night, so I just let it cure overnight. It was hand tight, so now I just need to go back and retighten everything. Of course, we did a new input shaft seal from FCP. Also, a good thing to note is that if these things ever start leaking again, FCP has a lifetime warranty on all their products. So, you know, let's say we go to a race and, you know, after a couple races, this thing starts leaking again, given that every gasket or every seal on this car has looked like someone tried to use their teeth to pull it out in the past. I can pull it back out. I can, you know, file those surfaces down, send it off to FCP, and they will warranty it. And we'll get a new seal ready to go. We'll be prepped and ready to race again. I don't think there's any other company that has like that level of support. I mean, other than this thing looking crusty, she's ready to go in. All the seals are done. All right, so HPS hooked us up with some my push lock guys. There's a couple bulkheads. I've already left them over by the car, but basically for this, I'm gonna bulkhead it, and then there's gonna be some push lock fittings. They go to the bulkheads. About to bop some holes in this thing. So I'm gonna hit one. It's gotta be like just over a 3/4 inch hole. Then we're gonna hit a second one, and those will push lock across. Push lock being the end type fitting. I prefer to use like legit stuff, but this is an E30, Spec E30. So one here, and one down here, which I need to get either like, you know, once we see it in the car, it'll help me determine where or what style I'm going to use here. But anyways, about to blast some holes in this thing, and then I think we're going to slap this in the car. We got some clearance on the backside, Luis?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. They go in the slotted holes?
I think you gotta crank this, right? So it's like angled back more.
What you got? What you got?
Catheter for E30.
Catheter.
This is what happens when E30 gets into an accident and it needs to be fixed. See? Now it can pee.
Mm-hmm.
And poop. Pee, poop.
New handbrake hardware. The car needs weight, and Larry wants to park it with a handbrake. He doesn't trust it being in gear. I don't trust anything on this car, so I don't blame him. And so we're putting a handbrake in. FCP has literally everything you need to do a brand new handbrake setup on the car. So we got all the new stuff from them. He went to Sparco and picked this up. Major update to safety. Oh, god damn it.
Ooh, 3.
3 MW. Lord Jesus, let me get the can.
Boy, oh, that sound is so satisfying. It's like a wind chime.
New bottle. Big. Just drop it. Immediately, yeah, rockets through the shop. Look at that.
The new.
The new.
And the old.
Last bottle was expired. Where was the expiration? Date of next service is February of 25. So as of the beginning of the month, hold on. We got the handbrake installed. I think today we're probably gonna do like the garage stick caliper lines. We'll probably get the diff in with the subframe. I need to redo this, so I'm contemplating like only doing the trailing arm and stuff on this side so that we still have access to this. Just to at least have some of it in. New inner outers. These were fun.
These are fun.
You pulled the calipers off. We found that super awesome treat. Yeah.
So these are the insides. This is what's supposed to be on the rotors.
That's what he was using.
Well, all right. That is our update for today. We'll see you guys in who knows when.
That was not me. That was my shoe. Overnight parts from FCP. What's up? Yeah, I see you're down there. Fresh. Freshies, dude. But basically they're just like performance OEM replacement struts. You know, we're not getting like adjustability. We can't change compression or rebound or anything like that. It's just, it just is what it is, you know.
That new, so we could get rid of these. These Jones.
You don't want those Biscoff cookies that we got down there for freaking...
These Biscoff cookies right here?
Yeah, yeah, those are definitely the cookies. Crumbly old shortbread looking at.
All right.
Let's see what we got here. Ooh! Drilled and slotted from Power Stop. And look, they tell you.
Slatted and dotted?
Front to passenger. So even I can't mess this up, y'all.
True that.
Mate. Oh, mate. This front end looks dialed now. Just once we get the brackets for these, boom. I think we're also gonna paint these with steel at high temp. So they won't be silver. That way they don't rust. Because these will immediately rust, you know?
And then look like those.
Yeah, exactly. And we're gonna do the garage stick bushings. We're gonna put speed bleeders on it instead of regular bleeders. I already got those. We just need the brackets, man. And brake pads, obviously. But yeah, this front end is clean. All right, so we did a little mini cleanup. We're about to throw this diff on the subframe and assemble that outside the car before it goes in. Putting the trailing arms in was kind of a struggle, or getting them out rather, was a struggle. Dan over here got this boy set up.
Oh yeah.
All right, we're putting this guy in, huh? Ooh.
Boom.
Nice.
And there you go.
Wow, this is the hardest install we've done. In the name of working with someone else's build, he had a fire pole here for the Marshalls originally. This was a lifeline housing in here, which is a little bit narrower diameter than the Sparco housing. And what I'm talking about is this part right here. So, you know, that guy would sit in here without, like, you know, ovaling out this hole and making this, like, you know, kind of janky. I just kind of sat here and fiddled with the lifeline one to make the Sparco pull work, because basically the nut on the back side of here could not physically fit in between the two tubes right here. Again, we're working with what we were given, and this is just, you know, how I'm gonna make this work. I don't know that this one is even necessary for the rules, but it is nice to have for safety until we like really trust this car. Essentially just another fire pole for the Marshalls in case that side is inaccessible for whatever reason. They can come to this side, you know, kill the car, pull the fire, and that'll be that. So we had to pull the gas tank out where we're mounting the fire bottle. You know, I'm drilling through the bottom back seat of the car, and that's essentially where this is. It's a good opportunity for us to look at this thing. Daniel drained out the old fuel out of it. So we just installed the Garagistic DSSR, and I already forgot the name of that. Oh, that's the extended selector joint. And holy cow, I mean, this thing feels so smooth. What do you think?
So nice. It's so nice.
I mean, it is. Like, it's...
This is going to have no play in it compared to the OEM ones.
Pretty excited to see this in the car. I think Larry's going to be juiced too, as this is probably one of the coolest, not even a dress-up piece, but my God, it's going to make the inside of the car look so good. I mean, look at this thing, dude. I want this in my Z, and I got a dog box, but this thing looks sick. It's got like a side-to-side self-centering mechanism and a forward and backwards self-centering. All right, so the transmission is in. We're gonna fill it with fluid. DSSR just needs to get hooked up to our shifter right here, and that'll be dialed in and ready to go. All right, we're about to get Mr. Daniel setting up this pumper, air pumper, in the car. So these things are pretty cool. I've installed a couple of these before. They included a universal kit, which essentially just uses like hose clamps. You can kind of mount it to almost anything, anywhere. And it just, these little brackets attached to the side. You run a hose clamp around whatever you're attaching it to. But we actually got some tube clamps, so we're gonna use those and probably mount it like behind driver's seat-ish on the tube there. In the process of installing some of the Garagistic stuff, please ignore this rat's nest of wiring. I did not do that. We pulled the pedals out, got rid of the landlord special. We did the Let's see if we can get in the right spot. I've already filmed this, but you can kind of see the brass, like brass colored bushings up here for the clutch and brake pedal. These are Delrin down in here for this like throttle mechanism. So those got done. We repainted all this stuff. We cleaned it up, made it look way, way nice. Dan's kind of in the process of installing it right now, or reinstalling, I should say. I've been working on the fire suppression. So we've got the majority of the lines made up. In the process of riveting things, working on getting these. Come in here and add a little bend in this guy right here. And then up here it'll tee off. Something will come up and across and point over there for Larry's feet. And then it'll go up and tag into that. After the bulkhead, it comes out into the engine bay. And this piece will sit here. So we've got one guy here who will point kind of like down at the headers and honestly the main oiling area of the motor. And then one that's gonna be on this end, a little 90-degree bracket, and we'll just kind of point down this way. Can you guys guess what's in this box? It's a CSF radiator. Okay. Wink. So we had to get kind of custom with the, you can't really see them anymore, but basically down below, yeah, here we go, here's a good angle. There's these like rubber bushings that the radiator sits on. This car's got 4 different mounts because I guess our guy got custom with it. And essentially, the core support is crushed in towards the front of the car. And so Daniel had to re-drill the holes further back so that the supports actually held the radiator. Otherwise, the supports were too close and the radiator would not fall into them and locate it. But with that being said, the CSF is in. The next part of this piece is this trick little garagistic piece right here. Part number for you guys right there. Comes with brand new rubber bushings. Pretty simple install. Basically, it just locates the radiator same way the OEM one does. This is just a purely bling part. And given that our things are so crushed, I think what we're gonna end up doing is like, I think we're gonna raise the car up on the lift and then put a pole jack under the supports and just like raise the lower supports until it kind of like squeezes it in this guy. So me and Dan are trying to put in the drive shaft and we're kind of fighting with it. It seems to be binding up and whatnot. And after a quick glance, we realize that our U-joints are out of phase. So basically, this joint right here on this end should be in alignment with this one. And this is actually 45 degrees like clocked. It's hard to get them both in the same shot, but basically on the other end it's not flat. It's off on these splines here. So we actually need to separate this, clock it to where it is in phase, and then we should be a little easier installing this drive shaft. Hotch, come here. Come here, Hotchie. Hotchie, man. We got Hotch in the shop. Hotchie, what's going on? What's going on, Hotch? Well, check it out. Here's where we're at today, guys. Basically, there was some cracks, or it was basically one gigantic crack, almost center to center around this bellow. And I attempted to weld it. I turned our welder down to the bare minimum settings it had, and it kept blowing holes in it. So I just said, forget it. We're gonna get a new one. So we hit up JMD Tubes. They're right down the street in Irwindale. We scooped this guy. It's close. We're gonna do what we can because the guy that makes these is like some guy in his garage somewhere, and he basically waits until he has like 5 orders ready to go before he'll fire one of these up. So we're not waiting on that. We got a race to do. We are reassembling the rear calipers right now. These got the Steel It high temp coating. I took them home, baked them for an hour at 400 degrees as the can suggests. I just hand polished these pistons. They were pretty cruddy. The whole thing was, honestly, whenever we took it apart. They were super rusted, tons of brake dust. Probably from the race that Larry had been in, to be honest. But there was some like caked on stuff that shouldn't have happened from one day of racing. Anyways, these things were pretty cruddy, so I cleaned them up, you know, scrubbed the rust off of them as best I could, and then gave them a polish because essentially you want this surface right here that rides on the seal to be nice and smooth. You don't want a bunch of like scaling from rust because you're just going to tear up your seal, they're going to leak. It's not ideal. For reference, these are just some spares that we picked up for me to rebuild later on down the line, but this is essentially what they looked like whenever I pulled them off the car. And you can see this piston's like super rusted. The whole thing is super crusty. You know, tons of like brake dust buildup from just being neglected over the years of, you know, the prior car's ownership. But we're basically going from something like this to these. This thing's back on. I've got the Garagistic brake line hooked up. We got a speed bleeder on it now. The Garagistic brass caliper guide bushings, and we have some fresh pads in there that are installed the correct direction so that Larry can actually stop, giving everything like a little bit of like a grease, you know, so that it all slides appropriately. Any kind of racing, you should be servicing your brakes. This is going to be something that we service significantly more than like a drift car would, just because of the amount of braking that happens in road racing, right? Like with drifting, like a lot of those cars have rotors front and rear that look like this, and your brakes aren't really getting hot. Road racing, you know, accelerating, burying the brakes, accelerating, burying the brakes, like this thing's gonna wick up some dust pretty quick. It's like this is probably one of the most important pieces of a road race car, because if you can't stop, you're gonna end up in the barriers, and that's not a good time. It's the Monday before we leave. We're leaving on Thursday, and if you can't tell, your boys are cooked. We're making good progress. We were waiting on a ton of parts to come in. Dust shield that we needed for the parking brake on this side. In a pinch like this, you know, we got something used really quick, which allowed us to assemble the parking brake on this side so that Larry can lift the handbrake and put it in park, as well as press in the wheel hub on this side. So next up is going to be to rotor on off, set the drum brake, put the assembled caliper on with said rotor, obviously wheel studs. We got a lot of supplies from HPS. We're redoing some of the fuel hose just because it was dry rotted and cracked in there. The exhaust went in, that was also a hiccup. Basically all of our studs were smoked, and so the manifolds were already installed, and so I just basically threw a die on every stud and just kind of gave it the old twist, you know, the old tight pickle jar lid, popping her off. Hopefully we can start the car tomorrow.
Do some donuts right here.
We have had the Garagistic team here thrashing because it is a couple nights before we got to go, and this thing is basically ready to start. We're actually going to have some time to do some of the accessories that we didn't think we were going to be able to get to, like the cool shirt, the helmet pumper, the radio, all the things that are nice to have, but they're not essential to racing. Thanks to Matt and all the guys at Garagistic, we would not be able to be this far along had they not been able to come through and just kind of provide that knowledge and know-how of how to get things done without having to check real OEM and all the install guides.
Hey, to the man who keeps asking if Kegel's doing his Kegels, knock it off.
All right, this is how the car sits after last night. She's basically ready. Everything is there. We didn't fully get to an alignment yesterday, but we ran into hiccups. Surprise, surprise. Just things just you know, just always sorting out issues and stuff with this car. I'm glad that someone else got to experience it so that I don't think I'm going absolutely insane dealing with this. So sorry that you had to deal with that, Matt and Nicholas and everyone at Garagistic, but we've got obviously like the grills and the kidneys to put on, the hood. I have some very light wiring that I need to button up, basically just like connecting the power wires. Dash needs to go in, obviously. We're filling up the fuel tank so that we can align it with full fuel. So I think I'm gonna try and actually get like the pumper, the cool shirt, like all the accessories. Oh, I gotta put like a little push lock fitting on this radium catch can that Dan mounted. This thing came out nice. We used some radium push lock hose and actually coupled it with an HPS 3/4 inch silicone tube 90, and then they make this sweet little like billet coupler unit. You can barely see it because it's black. It's in between those ear clamps. This thing was a pain to get on. One of the Garagistic guys, I forget who it was, but one of Matt's dudes was basically able to like muscle this thing on like he's just tying his shoes. So definitely humbled us all a bit, but yeah, we're gonna cut this guy down to size, get the push lock hose on there. That way this thing's all plumbed up and we're not just leaking fluids into the bay. We tidied up some of the old lines with some new HPS stuff for like the radiator overflow. We are going to put a nicer one on this car eventually. This thing looks like they found it at Goodwill and just repurposed it. But yeah, I mean, she's got fluids. We need a primer. We need to put the front strut bar on once it's back on the ground. And yeah, I mean, we're there. Like the car is there. We definitely would not have been able to make it this far if Matt and his team hadn't have shown up. I think you know, Dan and myself would have needed another week to get the car to this point, you know, and like manpower and everything, and then just general knowledge. You know, there's a lot of things along the way that we just, neither of us are familiar with, and Matt and the guys at Garagistic, like these are their cars. This is like their bread and butter. This is what they do. They know them. And so, you know, in times whenever Dan or I might be like pulling up a YouTube video or a diagram on real OEM to confirm the orientation of something or how it goes, you know, these guys are just like, oh yeah, this is that part, you know, part number, blah, 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 blah. It goes like this is what it does, da, 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 da. You know, and they just like slap it together because they're so familiar with it. Just, you know, that help, that knowledge is crucial in times like this whenever you're working with like an unfamiliar car. So yeah, huge shout out to those guys. Oil is in. We need to prime it, so I think we're gonna unplug the injector harness so we're not like fuel washing the cylinder walls. It'll just be sparking nothing, which should be fine. We're gonna go ignition. That's a good sign. I'm gonna unplug our injectors so it'll spark, but it's not gonna shoot fuel. Go ahead and hit start. Just see if it works. Just hit it and come off of it. All right, go ahead and prime it, and just, so basically you're just gonna hold the start button, and whenever you start seeing oil pressure, just let me know. We're looking for like, you know, 10, 15, 20, like call them out as you hear them or see them, okay? So go for it. That's it. I think it's dead.
Let's grab one of these boys.
Just throw the big,
One of these
big dog in
one of
there.
these AGVs. Yeah, the previous owner had one of these. One of those weak sauce batteries.
Yeah, the Green Goblin,
The
dude.
Green Goblin. Freaking. Oh yeah. The best.
It is the best, dude.
Use your muscles. Big muscles.
Yep. Yeah, that's got some weight to it.
Let's put the good battery in.
It's literally comical
One hand.
how easy that is. It's the day that we're supposed to leave, and we're gonna actually try and start the car. Ran into some wiring issues. Surprise, surprise. Basically the only thing I haven't touched on this car, and it's the one thing giving us issues, so I think we got it resolved, and Dan's literally about to try and crank it right now, so that's a good sign. Okay, so starter worked. Obviously we did prime the oil cooler decently well. From what I've read online, these things should passively flow a little bit of oil into the cooler while it's running before it just opens up and like loses all oil pressure. But just to be safe, we did prime it as best we could by pre-filling it with oil. Our next move is we're just gonna prime the engine to build oil pressure. So what I've done, there's numerous ways to skin this cat, but I've unplugged the injector harness right there. That little connector is unplugged. Basically the injectors are not gonna fire, so we're not gonna fuel wash the cylinder walls or anything like that while we're priming it. And that just allows us to just constantly crank it and prime the pump since we don't have any sort of pneumatic primer. So go ahead and hit it for a while, Dan. So now that we've primed it, we're pretty certain that the pump has oil in it since we're building pressure. We've cranked it enough to know that we've started to pump oil through the motor and kind of pre-oil everything. I think it's time to start it up. She's out of gear, right? All right, see if we have any luck here. All right, we've had Dan on the job. Dan in the mix.
Out here drilling.
So after we fixed all the starter stuff, our starter switch died, so we just went and got whatever the AutoZone special was and replaced it. Well, Dan did, I shouldn't say we. Yeah, this car got hands, huh?
Oh yeah.
Oh, and we found out the fuel pump wire was just like, had no power anymore. Everything else that comes on with the ignition gets power, but for some reason the fuel pump wire wasn't getting powered, so now it's just wired up hot to the kill switch. You know, you put the main kill switch on the car, fuel is on. Big money, no whammies. We just swapped the fuel lines. Everyone's keeping us on our toes. This car's got hands, but we got stronger hands. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. Woo! Oh my god, that is a good feeling. All right. You feel good about it?
Oh yeah. You want to hear a red line?